what happened was that the Honorable Prime Minister was there in Chhattisgarh, and he announced what extending Pradhan Mantri Kalyan Ann Yojna, a scheme providing 5 kg food grains every 5 months to beneficiaries of the National Food Security Act. So, firstly, you should know about Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Ann Yojna. Now, this Yojna is talking about, this scheme is about providing 5 kg food grains free every month to the beneficiaries of, so 5 kg food grain, and for how much month? Free every month. And to the beneficiaries. And where is or how do you know who are the beneficiaries? So these beneficiaries have been defined under your National Food Security Act. Now, National Food Security Act by 5 years, because he does not want any citizen to sleep hungry. So he says that by 5 years he will be, providing this much. And the reason being that no citizen or no person shall sleep hungry. This means that 80 crore Indians will still be receiving free food grains to starve off hunger in 2028. Now, this is the year the government expects India to become the third largest economy in the world with a GDP of $5 trillion. Now, will large swaths of Indians still be hungry with a GDP of $5 trillion economy? Now, the author, Ms. Nalini Singh, is saying that see, we are on the race of becoming a $5 trillion economy, and when we are saying that we were going for $5 trillion economy, what we are saying is that India's GDP would grow immensely. Now, if I go, yesterday also we did an article and that talked about that, we are going with the numbers, but what about the quality? That is economy of scope and economy of scale. That what I discussed yesterday. So here also we are, or the author is talking about that by numbers we'll become $5 trillion economy fine. That is the GDP of the country. But seeing the GDP of the country, is it, can you assure that every Indian or every citizen is hunger free, or there is no poverty? So the story of Japan's growth. For reference, let's take a look at Japan today, the third largest economy by GDP. So the author has taken what? The example of Japan. Just a minute. The screen has hanged a little bit. Please hold on for a second. Okay, so the author is taking the example of Japan. And why Japan? Because Japan is the third largest economy of the world. Now, in Japan, there is reportedly a death by suicide every 20 minutes. So, the author is saying that there is a death, that means one death by suicide, and this is happening per 20 minutes. That means about 15 lakh Japanese have not left their homes for years, a form of severe social withdrawal known as hikikomori. So, what is the author saying, or what is the journalist Nalini Singh is saying? She's saying that for years, what is happening is that 15 lakh Japanese have not left their home, and this they haven't left the home means that they have been just living inside their rooms or in the very very small closed place. So what they want to say is that there is social interaction that is missing. So that social withdrawal is known as hikikomori. That means social withdrawal is known as hikikomori. Old parents rent actresses who come up in on Sunday to call them mom and pop because their own daughters don't visit anymore. Every day, dead people are discovered in tiny apartments day or week after they died. Now, these are called kodokushi or lonely deaths. So, what is known as kodokushi? Now, these are some Japanese terms. Kodokushi, that is known as lonely deaths. Why? Because now Japan is facing this issue of lonely deaths. Japan is facing this issue of social withdrawals. Why? Because people have there's very less of social interaction. And why Ms. Nalini Singh has taken this example of Japan, because Japan is the third largest economy of the world, and if the economy could determine these parameters also, then like what was the need for the discussion, because we are also running by numbers to for a $5 trillion economy, and the author is saying that can we just take a second and look inside that what is happening. So that's the reason why she has taken Japan as one of the region for her study. Now, clearly, Japan's climb to the third position economy wise has not lifted all boats equally. That means the author is saying what, that even though Japan is in third position in the economy wise, but if you see what is happening is that all the positions have not been lifted. It has tossed the weak to the margin where they languish because economic growth on steroids has unpicked the safety catch of family and community ties. So the author is saying that even though Japan is the third largest economy in the world, but the point is that there are people who, economically it's okay, that economically we have grown by numbers, but what we find is that the safety or the community ties are missing. So one thing that could be concluded is that even though you become, third largest economy of the world by numbers, but then also what is happening is the ties, that is the community ties and safety measures missing. Now, for 40 years, Japan was the world's second largest economy, powered by manufacturing and exports. So the reason why, for 40 years, Japan had been the second largest economy because of its manufacturing and export sector. Now, but after the 2008 world financial crisis, The wheel came off the Japanese economy. Japan's population started spending less, exports shrank, and government incentives dried up. On the other hand, China enjoyed a manufacturing boom and dislodged Japan to become the world's second largest economy by GDP. On losing rank, however, Japan displayed remarkable ego free economic diplomacy. As soon as the economy plunged to the third position, Japan's leadership publicly welcomed China's accent. Now, see, what is happening is the author is telling that there are certain reasons why Japanese economy fall, and the reason were spending less. That means Japan's population started spending less. So, what is going to happen if the consumers are not going to inject money into the market? Then somewhere or other the economy will dry up. And this is what they are saying, that Japan's population started spending less. When they started spending less, exports shrank. So exports also shrank, and government incentives dried up. So on the other hand, China enjoyed a manufacturing boom. That means here you see Japan's exports are drying up. That means Japan is not exporting. Then probably another country would come in to replace it. So China witnessed a manufacturing boom. And by going by this, what happened was that Japan became the and Japan shifted from second largest economy of the world to the third position. Now, on losing rank, however, Japan displayed a remarkable ego-free economic diplomacy. That means Japan was, good enough and sane enough. It didn't went onto its ego. It didn't took anything on ego. As soon as the economy plunged to the third position, Japan's leadership publicly welcomed China's ascent, stating that sustained demand from the most populous country could only be good for Japan's exports. That means even that time Japan was kind of favoring China with a say that Japan's exports would be benefited. And how? Why? Because China is having what? Or China is a populous country. Now, based on this, what is going to happen? Japan's exports will be absorbed here. Now, even if the statement was made partially to save face, the two economies intertwined immediately. Today, China is Japan's largest trading partner. So, if you see, if you just see this, what is happening is that when the author was saying that Japan went for an eco-free economy, eco-free that means what was not in the state of competing in unnecessarily competing or unnecessarily getting into the number race. So what is the author saying that today also, if you see, China is Japan's largest trading partner, proving that in world political economy it pays to embrace your main competitor even if you are a Vishwaguru. That means there should be what? There should be respect for your competitors. Now, this ego-free activism has ensured that Japan has held on to the third position in the world GDP ranking for the last 14 years. That means for 40 years, Japan holded the position, second position, and for past 14 years, Japan is holding the third position. Why? Because it has embraced its competitor. But let us return to the palace story in Japan as the high value industrial economy took center stage. The strength of the personal and professional relationships withered, and the multi generational family and social structure became atomized. Now, this was a perfect storm in the lives of the traditional semi-skilled workforce. Why? Because workers moved from countryside and satellite towns to cities. Why? Because they thought here they will be getting a salaried job. But many discovered that they were not trained for the technological tsunami sweeping the high growth sectors. They fell through the cracks into the financial collapse and social withdrawal. So, see, the whole scenario is all the people who were there in the countryside, they shifted, and they shifted towards cities. And they shifted towards cities. Why? Because they thought that here is technological boom, and because of this technological boom, what is going to happen? They would probably get salary jobs. Now, when they went or when they came here in the city side for the salary job, what they found was that even if they, got salary, there was a technological tsunami that was sweeping the high growth sector. That means they were facing all the crisis. So, because of the crisis in the technological sector, so, because of the crisis in the technological sector, what happened was that there were a lot of cracks into the in the financial economy, and what happened was that people had no option. Why? Because see, they were lacking on the technical skills. Now, when they are lacking on the technical skills, what is happening is now, since they are not having those kind of technical skills, and there are crisis in the technological sector, so ultimately, what is happening is that now they will get onto the state of social withdrawal. They're not going to come out of their house, etc. So now, when there is a social withdrawal, what is going to happen is this is a condition of hikikomori. For all those people who are from the philosophical or philosophy optional, they could include this theory on their answers. Now, a deep divide. Today, the government of India claims that the country is on the cusp of an economic tsunami. How does the sprint of the target of $5 trillion bode for citizens, especially the 80 crore who will still be on free rations in 2028? So, India's economic growth pivots on capital, productivity, and labor. And data shows that for over four-fifths of Indians, the $5 trillion economy is a bridge too far. That means the goal of $5 trillion economy is still quite far to attain. Now, how or what basis they are saying so? So consider capital. Now, let's go with the capital. In 2021, 1% of the population owned about 40% of the nation's wealth, while 50% own 3% of the wealth, according to the Oxfam report. In such an environment, the dash towards a $5 trillion economy trophy lies in the grip of the resource rich power brokers who will seize the initiative. But ironically, it is the low resource citizen who are funding the investment for the proposed $5 trillion economy. Approximately 64% of GST came from the bottom 50% of the population, and top 10% contributed towards 3% of the GST. Now, see, the author is saying, or Ms. Nalini is of the opinion what she's saying, that if we consider the capital factor, by 2021 we have found, according to the Oxfam reports, What? That 41% of the wealth is owned by 1% of the population. That means the topmost 1% of the richest or the richest are holding your 40% of the wealth, and the 50% own 3% of its wealth, and 50% of the people are holding 3%. 50% of yeah, 3% of wealth. So if you see the number, 1% of people holding 41% of wealth and 50% of people holding 3% of wealth. Now if you see, the whole circle of economy is lying in the hands of these 1% people. Now how they are going to invest in the market will play a key role. Fine. At the same time, the contribution of labor, the other driver of growth, is hamstrung due to dubious educational and skill attainments and halting digital literacy. Now, productivity is just beginning to get a boost through the creation of digital and physical infrastructure. Now, what is happening is the government is aware that the rich are moving into pole position to deliver the $5 trillion target just before the 2029 elections. Now, clearly, this will bolster what upscale India's influence and power abroad and the Prime Minister's primacy in the world. So, this is about the political influence. So, not needed to be done. You need to have an understanding, but not nothing detailing is required. Other than that, what they are saying is the government's tool and sectors for achieving this goal were identified by the Minister of State for Finance, Pankaj Chaudhary, in Parliament on August 2023. As digital economy, fintech, energy transition, climate change, GST, insolvency, and bankruptcy could decrease in corporate tax, make in India, startup India, production linked incentives, all prefaced by the mandatory month of inclusive growth. That means when we talk about inclusive growth, what is going to lead to inclusive growth? So you have Make in India, you have Startup India, you have PLI, that is your production linked incentives. Then they are talking about fintech, digital economy, that means your finance sector is adapted with technology. So, fintech, digital economy. So, fintech, digital economy, Make in India, Startup India, production linked incentives, GST, IBC, corporate tax, etc. Now, all this have been brought in why? So as to bring in inclusive growth. Now, but these cutting edge sectors and tools are not native to the 80 crore marginalized citizens and 2 crores of others. They cannot seize the opportunities on offer in AI or data science or robotics or fintech either now or in the next 5 years. Now, the author is saying that all this has been brought, but and these are some kind of the tools that would bring changes into the economy. But what is happening is they cannot seize the opportunities on offer in artificial intelligence or data science or robotics or fintechs either now or in the next 5 years. So there are also other issues which the PM has guaranteed that India will be the third largest economy in the next 5 years. First is With a per capita income of $2,400, India ranks 149 among 194 countries in 2022. Since per capita income is a key index of population's well-being, note that the average Japanese at $34,000 is considered better off than the average Chinese at $13,000, even though China has outstripped Japan in the world GDP ranking. Now, firstly, what our PM has targeted is that the per capita income of the country, that means India, is $2,400, which makes India rank 149 among the 194 countries in 2022. Now, since per capita income is a key index of population's well-being, that means when we are talking about per capita income, we are actually talking about what is the well-being of the population. That means this parameter of per capita income determines about the population's income. So according to that, India is performing well with 149 rank among 194 countries. The next thing what they are saying is that average Japanese at $34,000 is considered to be better off than the average Chinese at $13,000, even though China has outstripped Japan in the world GDP ranking. Now, why is author referring this $34,000 and $13,000? Because the author is saying that a Japanese who hold an annual income of $34,000 is at a much better position compared to $13,000. What a Chinese. Why? Because why did the author took this example? Because the author wants to say that see, China is the second largest in world GDP ranking, but the person or the Chinese holding this $13,000 is not at all any better condition when it comes to Japan or a Japanese who is holding what $34,000. So a Japanese who is holding $34,000 is much good as compared to $13,000 Chinese. And even then also we are saying what, that who is the second largest economy, and then also we are referring China as the second largest economy. Now, what is India's per capita income projected to be at $5 trillion? There are no official estimates available. Now, what is the second thing? Second, the nub of the chase to $5 trillion GDP is in its distribution or in the inequality index. Now, this index generated by World Economics is on a scale of 0 to 100. A high value indicates a more egalitarian society. The values of both China and Japan are more than 50. Now, these countries appear to be sharing their economic fortunes more evenly than India, which has a value of 21.9. Now, will the divide between the two Indians deepen with the $5 trillion target? India might be on its way of achieving this goal, but most of the population still remains marooned in the slow lanes of an older Indian, watching as the new caravan storm past. Now, this has been very beautifully concluded, saying that we might achieve the goal of $5 trillion economy, which someday or other or in coming years we can. But the point is that even if we achieve this goal, what about the population? That means anyway, the calculation of the GDP or the you becoming the $5 trillion economy or you becoming the second largest economy or the third largest economy in the world doesn't guarantee the population is at a good condition. So seeing our country, that means India, what we find is that the older India, that means the aging India, or you can say the India which was there in the past, is very slow when it comes to adopt to the changes, or when it comes to adapting to the changes and growth. Now, while India is set to become the third largest economy in the world in 2028, 80 crore Indians will still be receiving free food grains to stave off hunger. Now, this is, this is the factors are, or the numbers are very shocking. Why? Because at certain place we are saying that our country is the third largest economy in the world by 2028, and then we are providing 80 crore Indians what free food grains. So a country which is providing free food grains to fight hunger is claiming to be the third largest economy in the world. So numbers represent something else. When it comes to ground reality, it is something else. How far this GDP calculation or how far the $5 trillion symbol is actually doing wonders, or this $5 trillion economy is actually representing who. So this was what the editorial was talking about. Let's move on to the next one. Now, there is an almost linear relationship between global warming and cumulative CO2 emission. Now, the United Nations framework, that means UNFCCC, in 1992 noted that per capita emission in developing countries are still relatively low, and that their share in global emissions will grow to meet their social and developmental needs. Now, the convention recognizes what? Okay, the convention recognizes the common but differentiated responsibilities and respective capabilities principle. So we are going to discuss about common but differentiated responsibilities and respective capability framework. Now this means different states have different responsibilities and different respective capabilities in tackling climate change. Now, this principle has been reaffirmed in the Paris Agreement, whose main aim is to hold the increase in the global average temperature to well below 2 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels, and pursue efforts for what? To limit the temperature increase to 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels. That means, all in all, the Paris Agreement that talked about limiting the rise of temperature to 1.5 degrees Celsius. And this is which is quite above the pre-industrial levels. According to the IPCC sixth assessment report, every 1,000 billion tons of CO2 in emissions causes an estimate of 0.45 degrees Celsius rise in the global surface temperature. Axiomatically, limiting the rise in global temperature to a specific level means limiting cumulative CO2 emission to within a carbon budget. Now, what is global carbon budget? What do you understand by global carbon budget? So, global carbon budget refers to the maximum cumulative global anthropogenic CO2 emissions from the pre-industrial era to when such emissions reach net zero, resulting in limiting global warming to a given level with a given probability. The remaining carbon budget indicates how much CO2 could still be emitted from a specified time after the pre-industrial period while keeping emissions biased to the specified limit. Now the IPCC assessment report, sixth assessment report, has shown that the world warmed by a staggering 1.07 degrees Celsius until 2019 from pre-industrial levels. So almost four-fifths of the global carbon budget stands depleted. That means we are talking about limiting the temperature to 1.5 degrees centigrade, and here we have seen what a rise of 1.07 degrees Celsius temperature rise until 2019 has actually shown what, that the carbon budget we talked about is nearly reduction. Only a fifth remains to meet the target set in the Paris Agreement. That is what I just talked about. Now, for 50% chance of limiting warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius, the US would have to reach net zero in 2025 rather than 2050. So, in order to limit what your carbon emissions, or if you say to check the warming, the authors of the opinion, what need to be done, US need to reach to net zero emission by 2025. That means the target was by 2050, but it should happen by 2025. Then we can say that there are chances. What chances? That we can 50% limit the warming. That means the global warming could be limited by 50% only if US comes to this net zero target by 2025 rather than 2050. Now, if okay, so if US comes to this target by 2025, then if Germany comes to 2030 and EU, that is your European Union with 28 blocks, they come to this target by 2031 instead of 2050. Now, who's responsible for cumulative global emissions? Now, according to IPCC assessment, sixth assessment report, the developed countries have appropriated a disproportionately larger share of global carbon budget to date. The contribution of South Asia, which include India, to historical cumulative emission is only around 4%, despite having almost 24% of the entire world population. Now, the per capita CO2, fossil fuel, and industry emissions of South Asia was just 1.7 tons CO2 equivalent per capita, far below North America, which was 15.4 tons CO2. CO2 emissions per capita, and also significantly lower than the world's average, that is 6.6 tons of CO2 equivalent per capita. Now, this is your global emissions. Now, how does the carbon budget matter for India? Again, the point is that we brought this concept of carbon budget. Then we are talking about it. Even the developed countries are working towards it. But then also we couldn't reduce the emission, and the target, the net zero target, is still quite far. And if we want to reduce the warming temperature by 50%, we actually have to reach this net zero target, and for that European Union should meet this target by 2031. For Germany it should be 2030, and for US it should be 2025. Now the point is, How does the carbon budget matter for India? So the global carbon budget for a given temperature limit is a global source common to the entire world, but is exhaustible and limited, and with only equitable methods of sharing it consistent with the foundational principle of UNFCCC. Now, India must recognize a fair share of the carbon budget as a strategic national resource whose reserves are depleting rapidly due to overexploitation by developed countries. In a rapidly depleting global carbon budget, if we fail to deploy resources at our command to forcefully use it as a strategic national resources, we will be shortchanged by new colonial techniques of developed countries. Now, what are those techniques? In almost all the emissions scenarios estimated by IPCC, the world breaches an increase of 1.5 degrees Celsius from the pre-industrial level in the early 2030s. Now, this is yesterday also, and just 2 days before yesterday also, we found this that the 1.5 degrees Celsius temperature or the target of this is not we are every now and then breaching this target. That means the emission is expanding, or uh, this is just getting breached. So what is happening is, in 2022, oil, coal and gas accounted for 30%, 27%, 23% of the world's total energy, while solar and wind energy together contributed only 2.4%. Now the world is still largely powered by non-renewable energy. Developed countries have tried to browbeat developing countries into accepting rapid economy wide changes. Now, see what is happening is that altogether, the maximum emission that maximum emission is coming from the developed countries. But when it comes to taking the responsibility, what is happening is the developed countries are not taking the responsibility, even though they are trying to achieve that goal, but they hold developing countries also responsible for the same. So this is again what the editorial is talking about, that even though developed countries have tried to browbeat developing countries into accepting rapid economic wide changes, at Conference of Party 26 talks in Glasgow, they forced the issue of phasing down the use of coal, but then backtracked by reopening what coal plants across Europe after the Russia-Ukraine war created an energy crisis. That means during that time, what happened was that when Russia-Ukraine war was happening, there was a lot of energy crisis that was happening. That means the transmission of energy was quite fluctuating. So what happened was that during this Conference of Parties 26 talks in Glasgow, they forced the issue of phasing down the use of coal, but then backtracked by reopening coal plants. That means all the things that were not able to take off during Russia-Ukraine war crisis were made to be met by the use of coal plants. Now, this has illustrated that the immediate phase out of fossil fuels is infeasible in the face of shocks, and also limits developing countries' access to their room to grow. The developed countries have stretched the arguments further by calling gas green and a bridge fuel towards their own decarbonization efforts. That means what they have talked about is, or what they have said, the developed countries, like what they or how they are contributing towards bringing the carbon emission low, or net zero carbon emission, and or you can say lowering the temperature. It is through making, or through using those green gases, and also using a bridge fuel. Okay, fine. Now, what should India's stand be at COP28? COP26, I have just talked about with you, that happened in Glasgow. COP27 just happened in Egypt, and COP28 is now at stance. So, according to the Niti Aayog UN Development Programme's Multidimensional Poverty Index Report 2023 review, India has been able to lift more than 135 million poor out of poverty in less than 5 years. So, according to this Multidimensional Poverty Index report, it has been said that India was able to lift close to 135 million people out of poverty. Now, India has also just extended food security welfare measures to more than 800 million people in the country under Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Ann Yojna, highlighting the magnitude of the challenge of poverty eradication after COVID-19. Now, development is the first defense against climate change. How long will developing countries have to divert their scarce resources, manpower, and attention to meeting global problems created by the developed countries? Just a minute. Okay. Until developed countries themselves undertake mitigation efforts in their own backyard, the exercise will be a hogwash. That means there's a lot of contribution that is being demanded from developed countries. The reason being, I just told you that maximum emission is coming from their side, and when it comes to responsibility factors, they are taking developing countries also onto the nexus. So, developed countries has to come forward. Now, it is imperative that developing countries receive a fair and equitable share of their carbon budget alongside stronger and more fruitful commitments from developed countries, including promised but unmet climate-specific new additional finance. The Indian government has led from the front to foster international consensus to tackle climate change. To this end, India has set up what International Solar Alliance, that is your ISA. So one is your ISA, International Solar Alliance. Now other one is the Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure and Global Biofuel Alliance. So you have this, and through lifestyle for environment life mission, Indian government also aims to spread awareness of good lifestyle. And what is or what do you understand by awareness of good lifestyle? That kind of lifestyle which establish what sustainable lifestyles. Now at COP28, India must demand a fair share of its carbon budget or equivalent reparations to bring about fairness within the global order. Only development brings with it an assurance to tide over the roller coaster of climate change. Scientists estimate that at a conservative price of $50, that means developed countries' carbon debt to the world is pegged at over $51 trillion. That means this is the carbon debt to the world by the developed countries is how much? It's $51 or 51 trillion. So based on India's historical emissions, it has a carbon credit equivalent to 338, equal to around $17 trillion. Now, without finance and technology, as promised in 1992 Rio Earth Summit, developing countries stare at an even more unfair world. Now, the cover decision of Glasgow Climate Pact recorded an unprecedented regret regarding what on the failure of developed countries and to provide what US dollar $100 billion a year as promised at COP 15 talks in Copenhagen. We need more finances and less rhetoric forms. Developed countries, far too long developed countries have made a free pass, and it's time for new India to take them on. So, if you see, the article has all in all talked about what? Firstly, it has talked about uh, just a second. Okay, so firstly, it has talked about the UNFCCC and the Paris Agreement, and what has this talked about? Now, it has talked about the principle of differentiated responsibility among nations concerning climate change. That means the climate change issue is a universal issue, and the responsibility varies from nation to nation. So, responsibilities varying from nation to nation. The sixth assessment report highlights that the developed countries have historically contributed disproportionately higher cumulative emissions compared to developing nations. Again, every now and then I have been saying that the contribution of the developed nations towards carbon emission is much, much, much higher as compared to the developing nations. Now, India, despite having a lower per capita carbon footprint compared to developed nations, faces challenges due to the depletion of the global carbon budget. Now, the country's developmental needs and poverty eradication efforts are hindered by the pressure to address global environmental issues caused primarily by the developed nations' emission. So, if you see, India is a developing nation and India is facing issues. And what is that? That even though we have lower per capita carbon footprint, which is compared very less as compared to the developed nation, we face challenge of what, due to depletion of the carbon budget, the country's developmental needs and poverty eradication efforts are hindered. That means somewhere or other climate is playing a big role towards poverty eradication also. Poverty eradication, hunger issues, etc. Now, developed countries haven't met promised financial commitments impacting climate mitigations. Now, India has taken proactive steps by establishing alliances like International Solar Alliances advocating sustainable lifestyles. So, initiatives like Life Missions. So, these are the contributions that have been made by India. Fine. Okay. Now, let's move on to the next analysis. Now, Manrega's audit crosses 50% local bodies in just 6 states. Now, Kerala is the only state to cover 100% Gram Panchayats. Now, Manrega is what? Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme. The states complain that the audit is delayed because the center does not release the funds for social audits units in time. Now, you should know that Manrega is the scheme which has been brought by the former government past. Now, of the 34 states and union territories, only 6 have completed social audit. Audit regarding like what kind of work is being done and how many work, what is the quality of work that has got over under Manrega. So, social audit of works done under Manrega in more than 50% of Gram Panchayat. And Kerala is the only state to cover 100% Gram Panchayat. High rate of corruption is one of the primary complaints against the scheme, and social audit is the inbuilt anti-corruption mechanism. Now, these numbers are sourced from the Management Information System on Social Audit maintained by the Union Ministry of Rural Development. Section 70 of Manrega says Gram Sabha shall monitor the execution of the work. So it is the section 70 of Manrega that is talking about what? Monitoring of work, monitoring of the executed work. And this shall be done by Gram Sabha. Now, each state has social audit units which are supposed to work independent of the implementing authorities. Now, the auditing standards laid down by CAG were issued only on December 19, 2016. Now, see the year, it is 2016. Under these, every social audit is entitled to funds equivalent to 0.5% of Manrega's expenditure incurred by the state in the previous year. The audit involves what? Quality check infrastructure. That means, if you remember, there have been many incidences in the past where you find that a bridge has collapsed, the dam has collapsed. Now, based on that, what this social audit is all about? The social audit is all about that you need to check the quality of the infrastructure that has been provided. So, quality check of infrastructure created under Manrega, checking for financial misappropriation in wages and procedural deviations. Other than Kerala, the state to cross the 50% mark is your Bihar, Gujarat, Jammu Kashmir, Odisha, and Uttar Pradesh. Now, only three states have covered 40% or more villages: Telangana, Himachal Pradesh, and Andhra Pradesh. Now, what is the uniform problem? Other than Telangana, among the poll bound states, the numbers are really low. That means now Madhya Pradesh is 1.73%, Mizoram is 17%, Chhattisgarh is 25%, Rajasthan is 34%. The problem is uniform irrespective of the party in power across the country. Now, the center has multiple times reminded the states that if social audits are not conducted regularly, then the funds under Manregas will be withheld. Now, the states complain that the audit is delayed because the center does not release the fund for the social audit units, which work independent of the state governments in time. That means, this is your Manrega scheme. Now, under Manrega scheme, what is happening? The work or infrastructure building work is being done. Now, there will be like, how will the government know that what is the work performed or how much the funds need to be diluted? So, based on this, a social audit is being done. Now, once the social audit is being done, the team of social audit is working what? Independent of the state government. That means it is not something which is working under the state government. So, the fund for this social audit need to be provided by the center. Now, there are recurring complaints of delayed salaries for the village level auditors. That means the people who are auditing the infrastructure that has been, that has been worked or that has been created. Those auditors at village level are experiencing what? Delayed salaries. Why again there's delayed salaries is because the funds are not coming from the center. Now, the Kerala Rural Development Minister said it was the only state that also holds periodic social audit public hearings, that is Janki Sabhas, at the panchayat level to subject the audit reforms to close to public scrutiny. In the other states, such public scrutiny is done only at block level. Now, we have taken a host of measures to make our social auditing mechanism robust, including holding periodic panchayat level public hearings where all stakeholders are going to participate. And anyway, Kerala has a healthy culture of people's participation in governance. So this we have seen during COVID pandemic also, that Kerala has been performing really well when it comes to the governance aspect. And at the same time, we have also seen that Kerala is one state that has reached to like close to 100% literacy. So the governance of the Kerala cannot be questioned for that matter. So if you see what has the audited panchayat saying, Kerala is the only state that has completed social audits of all the activities that is done under Manrega in each of its Gram Sabha. So you must remember that Manrega, we are having infrastructure creation. Then we have the social audit team, which is independent of the state government. Now, this social audit is happening regarding like what? Now, social audits are about all the activities that are done, and these activities are done under Gram Sabha. Now, map shows percentage of Gram Panchayats audited nationally for Manrega activities in the fiscal year of 24. Okay, so this much was for today. Thank you so much.